Today, in a 5-1 decision, the California State Supreme Court ruled that Rodney Alcala did not receive a fair trial.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're looking at the most egregious instances in which suspected or convicted criminals evaded justice after their charges were thrown out due to a legal technicality.
We all just sort of took a collective gasp.
Mohammed Izzeddin. On December 23, 2023, Mohammed Izzeddin and Mohammed Alwi broke into a business in New York City, where they allegedly sexually assaulted a woman and robbed her of about $300.
Authorities are telling us this horrible crime happened really just days before Christmas, and they've been on the search for these two suspects ever since.
Izzeddin was arrested a few days later and faced multiple criminal charges, including robbery and unlawful imprisonment. However, in January 2024, Izzeddin was unexpectedly released from custody after a judge ruled that prosecutors had missed a crucial deadline to file an indictment against him.
I've lived in a few different neighborhoods in New York, and I've had the least problems here, I'd say. Yeah. So that is concerning.
According to New York state law, the district attorney's office must formally charge a suspect within 6 days of their arrest. Izzeddin's lawyer successfully argued that this legal requirement had been breached, prompting the judge to grant the suspect supervised release. Courtney Hackney. In May 2017, police responded to a home in Independence, Kansas, where they discovered 57-year-old Holly Barnett dead.
I immediately called the police and stuff because I was like, Mo, she's dead, there's no life right there no more.
Subsequently, a woman named Courtney Hackney, who claimed to be Barnett's niece, was arrested for her murder. The trial commenced in 2018, but ended in a mistrial after jurors failed to reach a unanimous verdict. Prosecutors aimed for a retrial in 2019, but scheduling conflicts with Hackney's defense attorney and some state witnesses led to the charges being dropped with the intention to refile later.
Prosecutors tried for a second trial, but due to multiple scheduling conflicts with witnesses, the case was dismissed with the intent to refile. That's where the case came to a halt.
However, as Hackney had already been tried and did not affirmatively consent to the refiling, double jeopardy applied, which prevented her from further prosecution for the same offense. Consequently, the charges were dismissed and Hackney was set free.
Why? Why did this happen?
Jane says Holly may not have justice, but after a tough life, she is at peace.
I believe Holly's in a better place. She's not suffering anymore.
Donald Clark. Willis and Edna Sample had just returned to their Cottondale, Alabama home on November 30th, 2016, when they were accosted by two assailants and robbed at gunpoint.
According to authorities, two black men with camouflage face paint broke into the Cottondale home on 55th Court East Wednesday, November 30th, and stole several things, including the couple's vehicle.
Tragically, shortly after the incident, Willis Sample suffered a heart attack and passed away. One of the suspects, Donald Clark, was arrested a few days later and charged with Sample's murder, as well as first-degree robbery, burglary, theft, and kidnapping.
21-year-old Donald Clark now faces multiple charges.
Although Clark admitted to his involvement in the home invasion, a judge later determined that he did not fully comprehend his Miranda rights when he waived them. Since prosecutors lacked additional evidence beyond Clark's confession, the charges against him were dropped and he was released.
A judge dismissed the case against Donald Clark back in June of this year, just days before the trial was set to begin over a legal technicality. Clark confessed to the crime, but a medical professional found he didn't knowingly and willingly waive his Miranda rights during interviews with law enforcement.
Mark Papamichael. Peabody, Massachusetts resident Mark Papamichael first encountered legal trouble for sexual impropriety in 1986, resulting in a conviction on indecent assault and battery. Since then, he has faced further convictions for similar charges, including 2 for sexual assault.
He has a total of 8 convictions on his 6-page criminal history. 4 of those convictions are for sex offenses.
In October 2017, Papamichael was arrested yet again, this time for assaulting a 55-year-old woman. Her testimony before a grand jury was pivotal in securing an indictment against him. However, before Papamichael could stand trial for the crime, his alleged victim passed away.
But since the victim died, prosecutors say they can't press charges without her testimony, leaving Papamichael free to go home.
Admitting her testimony in court would have violated Papamichael's Sixth Amendment right to confront his accuser. Hence, the charges were dismissed, and he was allowed to walk free, a decision that left his alleged victims and their families deeply unsettled.
Watch out. Watch out. Watch your wives, your daughters, your sisters, because he's not to be trusted.
Stephen Mendez. This Bronx, New York teenager was out on probation for an unrelated armed robbery when he allegedly shot and killed another man in October 2021. The victim, 21-year-old Sekou Koma, was believed by authorities to have been killed in a case of mistaken identity.
He was a very good boy, gentle. He don't have no problem. He don't deserve to die like this.
Stephen Mendez was subsequently arrested and indicted on murder charges by a grand jury. However, during the proceedings, a Bronx Supreme Court justice found the detective's testimony before the grand jury to be, quote, problematic and, quote, improper.
Judge Naida Samaj tossed out Mendez's entire murder indictment after she took issue with the way an NYPD detective identified Mendez in surveillance video to a grand jury.
This potentially biased the jury against Mendez and likely influenced his indictment. Despite his violent past, Mendez was released on his own recognizance, with the judge granting prosecutors 45 days to re-present their case to the grand jury.
It's like my son's life is not valuable to the judge or the lawmaker, because I think they have to value the dead life, because the people who kill him, they're free out there working.
Dwight DeLee. In November 2008, Letitia Green, a transgender woman, was fatally shot in Syracuse, New York. Police arrested Dwight DeLee for the shooting, accusing him of committing the crime out of hate for Green's sexual orientation.
In 2008, Green was shot and killed while sitting in a car on Seymour Street.
Following a trial, the jury delivered a perplexing verdict. DeLee was found guilty of manslaughter as a hate crime, but not of regular manslaughter. This posed a dilemma, which DeLee successfully exploited during his appeal.
DeLee was once convicted of manslaughter as a hate crime in this case, and then a higher court threw out the conviction, saying instructions to the jury were unclear.
Consequently, he was granted a new trial solely for the hate crime charge and chose to represent himself. He managed to convince a jury that he harbored no bias against Green, resulting in his acquittal and release. By this time, DeLee had spent around 8 years behind bars awaiting a retrial.
I fought diligently, and here I am standing.
Jose Inez Garcia Zarrata. When 32-year-old Kate Steinle was fatally shot along Pier 14 in San Francisco, it was quite clear who had fired the weapon. A man named Jose Inez Garcia Zarrata.
It will instead turn on a question surrounding what happened that summer evening when the gun was fired on a waterfront pier, killing 32-year-old Kate Steinle as she was visiting San Francisco with her family.
However, Garcia Zarrata maintained that the shooting was not intentional, claiming he had found the gun moments before and had accidentally discharged when he handled it.
Defense attorney Matt Gonzalez, however, is arguing that it was an accident waiting to happen.
Despite this assertion, he faced multiple charges, including first-degree murder and illegal possession of a firearm. At trial, the jury acquitted Garcia Zarrata of the murder and manslaughter charges, but found him guilty of firearm possession.
We're quite shocked at the outcome here.
This charge was, however, overturned on appeal, as the court found that jurors had not been properly informed about the lesser charge of momentary possession of a firearm. Kamari Belmont. Kamari Belmont, a Chicago defendant in a murder case, had a stroke of luck in the form of a legal technicality. Belmont had been charged with attempted murder in the May 2015 shooting of Sorrell Marshall.
As Kamari Belmont sat in Cook County Jail charged with murder, the clock started running.
We want accused people, we want victims, witnesses, everybody. We want them to have a speedy trial.
After Marshall succumbed to his injuries 3 weeks later, the charge should have been upgraded to murder. However, prosecutors failed to do so until a year later, violating Belmont's right to a speedy trial. As a result, the charges were dismissed, and Belmont walked free.
In all my years, and I've handled hundreds of murder cases, the first time this has ever happened.
However, whatever luck Belmont had quickly turned sour, as he was gunned down mere minutes after leaving the Cook County Jail. Authorities suspect it was a meticulously planned attack, likely carried out by rival gang members.
Minutes after Belmont posted bond Monday night and left County Jail, someone in this SUV fired shots at the 23-year-old. He didn't make it to the hospital.
Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby faced dozens of sexual misconduct accusations, some dating back to the 1960s. Among these accusers is Andrea Constand, who initiated a civil lawsuit against him in 2005. To secure Cosby's testimony during the deposition, then District Attorney Bruce Castor assured him no criminal charges would be pursued.
So there were a lot of things that led me at the time to think that a prosecution would be problematic. And unprovable.
However, after the allegations against Cosby came to light, he was charged with the aggravated indecent assault of Constand, using his own admissions as evidence. In 2018, Cosby was found guilty, but this was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court 3 years later.
Even though the jury believed them in that courtroom, it has now been undone by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania.
The justices determined that his due process rights were violated when prosecutors broke their promise to not prosecute and barred any further legal action on those charges.
The fallout continues after Bill Cosby was released from prison yesterday.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Rodney Alcala. Referred to as the dating game killer for his infamous appearance on The Dating Game, Rodney Alcala was linked to 8 murders, but the actual number may be way more.
Prosecutors say when he was young, Alcala was a master manipulator.
It's The Dating Game!
Alcala became bachelor number 1 on the hit show The Dating Game.
Police arrested Alcala in 1979 after the murder of Robin Christine Samso. He faced trial twice, and in both cases was convicted and sentenced to death. However, both convictions were also overturned on technicalities.
Both verdicts were later overturned.
The first occurred in 1984, when the California Supreme Court ruled that the jury had been wrongly informed about Alcala's prior sex crimes. Then in 2001, Alcala's defense successfully argued against the use of testimony from a previous witness who claimed amnesia. Alcala was ultimately convicted in 2010, but he died of natural causes while awaiting execution.
Prison officials say Rodney Alcala passed away from natural causes at a Kings County hospital.
What other criminals have you heard of that slipped through the cracks of the law? Let us know in the comments below.
Dwight DeLee, the man accused of killing her, now walking free.